to episode 259 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harmon, joined live in our virtual studio on the internet by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is sort of enjoying a day of PTO, John Scott Sloat.
I took the day off. I don't know that I have a day off though, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, when you're a vice president, I mean, does Kamala get a real day off? Do we know?
I don't know. Here's my qualm with politicians. Like, I feel too busy in my life to golf. Like, I enjoy getting out on the golf course. I get out handful of times a year. I wish I could get out weekly. It's not feasible. And then I see these politicians, presidents of the United States, who get out all the time to play golf.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what's going on? Like, are you not busy enough to be like, gosh, I actually have all this work to do. I can't go golfing. Or, you know what I mean? Like, they're golfing all the time. Like, we had two presidential candidates arguing over their handicaps at a presidential debate this last year.
Well, I am in no way defending their.
I sense a butt coming.
There is, yes. They do have the advantages of, well, we can just close down half a course at a time and they can just blitz through a round. You know what I mean? Like they have so instead of it taking, say, 4 hours to play around to 18, 3-4 hours to play a round of 18, they can probably do it in half the time. They're on carts, they're clicking around, they're moving around. And, I will say, when did you officially become the vice president of advancement here at Grace College and Grace Theological
3 months ago, but I felt that way in my previous role, where I just had too much to do to play golf on the regular.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. Yeah, surely you've got donors and friends
Absolutely.
of the institution that you can combine work and and pleasure here.
And I do. Hear me out. When I play, it's an efficient time for me. It's double dipping.
Yeah. I mean, the president hasn't taken you out golfing recently, or well, not recently. I mean, that'd be again, you picked this up in August, so I wonder if that'll change once you get a full year in the job where you're at you have a full summer available to you for the golfing.
Yeah. So I was invited to play with him once, but I was at a conference this summer. I've never played with him. I know he goes out and plays. He plays at like 6 a.m. He'll play 9 holes first thing in the morning in the summer.
Yeah, I remember when I played with him this summer, he made a couple of cracks because he was playing well. He made a couple of cracks of, I may be playing too well, making you wonder what I'm doing with all my time since I'm playing this well. So anyway, if you would like to contact the show and ask John what his handicap is,
not good. It's not good. That's the answer.
You can find us on X at VNS Pod. You can email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. And you can find us on Facebook and on YouTube. And we would love for you to leave a 5-star rating and a review. Say something nice. Say something snarky. Say something funny. Amuse us. Entertain us.
Say anything.
Well, keep it clean. This is still a family program.
Fair enough.
All right, John. Let's talk some sports. Hey, let's lead with some good news. Jets win.
Yep. They beat the horrifying Jacksonville Jaguars.
But isn't this such a Jets thing? Now
Yes.
that they have no chance of making the playoffs, now they're going to win a couple of meaningless games, which detracts from their draft position, which lowers their draft position.
Which is how we didn't get Trevor Lawrence in the first place,
Yeah.
right? We were supposed to get Trevor Lawrence instead of Zach Wilson because we were so bad.
Yeah, but come on. I mean, it's easy to revisit this, I suppose, but man, like any I don't know why people were high on Zach Wilson to begin with based on his college years. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But I remember Trevor Lawrence doing radio interviews and being asked, how do you feel about the Jets? It's where you're most likely going. How do you feel about New York? How do you feel about New Jersey? They were asking those questions.
yeah.
But
Yes. So
they did win. It seems like Aaron Rodgers is getting healthier-ish. He
ish.
is as healthy as a 40-something quarterback in the NFL could be. That's, probably on illicit drugs. But he
Probably. Yeah.
threw for 3 touchdowns and ran for 40, led the Jets in rushing for 45 yards. First player to ever do that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a recipe for success to have Aaron Rodgers as your leading rusher.
No, 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 not sustained success. And now because he's starting to play a little bit better, it's, oh my goodness, do you bring him back next year and try to run this back or?
No.
And the answer is no. You tear it down to the studs. You let Tyrone Taylor behind him take the run.
Tyrod.
Tyrod,
Taylor.
excuse me. I knew I was getting that wrong. And and you develop a rookie. You get a rookie in the second round next year, somebody with a cannon for an arm that you can develop in the background.
Yeah, the problem is that this upcoming draft class of quarterbacks is not going to be anything not anything. It doesn't look like it's going to be anything exciting. I mean, just look at the fact. I mean, think about, and we'll get to this in a little bit. Think about the Heisman Trophy is typically now a quarterback award in college football,
Sure.
and that wasn't the case this year. What that typically means is that there were no quarterbacks who were outstanding, and so you get you get a running back in, you get a couple of, you get running backs in there, you get Travis Hunter or whatever. But yeah, so
So
free
here,
agency. Any chance they go after Justin Fields?
I'd love it. I'd welcome Justin. Um, really anything. I mean, I think getting a not top tier quarterback in free agency could make a lot of sense for them. Going after somebody I mean, they have a pretty good offensive line. So I think putting somebody back there that can throw the ball accurately and move the offense down the field and invest on the defensive side of the ball could make a little bit of sense for them. Um, my pushback on not drafting a quarterback, though, is I'm just not convinced anybody has any real sense of whether these quarterbacks will be good or bad. And I just think it's such a roll of the dice that, the next Russell Wilson could be sitting out there, or the next Russell was a little Jekyll and Hyde, right? But the who's the guy at Washington right now that's come out of nowhere and seemed to have been really good?
The guy
Um,
at
Daniels,
Jaden
Daniels, Jaden Daniels.
Daniels. Yes, he was at LSU. I mean, he was I think he was a finalist for the Heisman last year. He didn't win it, but
Was he
I
a
mean,
first round draft pick?
I think so.
Really? Okay,
I think
he's just
so.
seemed to come out of nowhere for me and been really, really good. They're, one of these, looking for a quarterback that's second, third round could come out and be really, really. I just don't think anybody knows what they're doing when they're drafting, particularly the Jets, particularly around quarterback.
Yeah, well, part of the issue is that um, you need to develop these kids, right?
Hmm.
And you need to do it relatively quick. Gone are the days where you draft somebody, even someone like a Jordan Love at for the Packers. Like he sat for what, 2 years, maybe three, and finally when they were ready to move on from Aaron Rodgers, he had been sitting in the system for a couple of years before he ever really took meaningful snaps. And nowadays, the pressure is just so great to get these guys um, immediately on the field. And that the thought of drafting somebody and sitting them for 2 years, it just doesn't happen. It's just so rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you think of, you look back to a guy like Peyton Manning. Like he came in and played right away, but he threw like an unbelievable number of interceptions his first year. Like
Hmm.
tons of picks. Well, nowadays, would he get a chance again? After,
Probably, he'd
maybe
probably
in a
get a
different,
second year, but he'd be on thin
yeah,
ice.
yeah. So anyway, um, speaking of self-destructing, how about the Colts?
I saw some highlights on Twitter from that, like a double backward pass is that for an interception.
Okay, so I turned I turned the game off. They were up 13-7 early early third quarter. So I was stunned when I saw that the final score was 31-13, that they had lost that badly.
Man,
And then I mean two highlights stand out. One is at a point where the Colts were still playing well and in contention, uh, their all league running back, Jonathan Taylor,
dropped
runs
the
for a
ball.
touchdown and drops the ball
Yeah,
before he passes the goal line. And I just don't get, why do people do this, John? It's so
it's
dumb.
it seems to be happening more and more.
Like, how hard is it to hang on to the football another 2 yards and get well into the end zone before you drop it? Like, why is this difficult? And
I don't know if you even need 2 yards. I think 2 feet would do the trick.
what is the impulse to get there and immediately drop the football? Like, I don't get this. This just seems so dumb to me. But there's that play, and then of course the double pass that was intercepted and run back for a touchdown.
Yeah,
Um,
big mistake.
just yeah, just laughable. Uh, and did you catch? I was disappointed that I didn't get the Lions Bills game, which was arguably the headline game of the day.
Oh yeah.
And instead, I was forced to suffer through the uh, parts of the Colts and Broncos game. But in any case, um, more criticism of Dan Campbell, the Lions coach, right? Just Mr. Uber aggressive. He's down. I think what was he down? I think he was down 10, maybe, with like 12 minutes to go, and he
Hmm.
lines up for an onside kick. And now that the rules have changed, like you have to like announce it. Like you can't
Declare.
do the surprise onside kick, which just seems crazy. So um, again, I feel like the Lions are probably the best team in the NFL. But last year in the NFC Championship game, it came back to bite them. His relentless aggression when look, maybe you take a field goal here instead of going for it on fourth down, or maybe you punt the ball and try to pin the other team deep as opposed to going for it on fourth down. These kinds of things where it just doesn't seem like he can dial it back. He is all in on aggressive decisions and playmaking. And I think that could end up preventing them from winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, yeah. Or, a gambler like that hits eventually, and maybe he'll hit a series and they'll go all the way to the Super Bowl and win it.
But you have to get on a roll, and you have to, yeah, I don't know, like especially as you get late in the playoffs, and the difference between the teams is so minimal. Man, there's aggressive and there's stupid, and I don't think he always knows the difference. So,
Sure, sure.
uh, let's see. Is anyone paying attention to the NBA Cup tournament?
I don't even understand how that works. Like, I know it's the NBA
Sh-
Cup because the court is, I can't watch the games because the
Oh,
court is
they're
burning
so
my
bad.
eyes.
They're so
Um,
bad. And I know I sound like the grumpy old man, get off my lawn, but like it's a hard watch just for
I
the floor colors and stuff.
I lose retina. Like it's destroying my eyes. I don't even know if retina is the right thing. Cones. I don't know what's going on in my eyes, to tell you the truth. Um, but I know it's happening because of that, but I don't understand the formats. I know that they started this last year. Is that right?
This might be the third year now,
Is it third year? But
maybe.
I don't get it. I'm not usually watching, and I know they're doing it to drum up viewers for the NBA early in the season because
Hmm.
probably like me, it feels like everything up until this point is regular or preseason until we get to Christmas Day. And then, I'll watch on Christmas Day, and then I probably won't watch again until after the Super Bowl.
But here's the thing. Will you watch on Christmas Day? Because now the NFL has decided we're going to take a piece of that.
What time's the NFL game on Saturday or on Christmas Day? Do you know?
I think I think there's two, but I want to say they're probably mid-afternoon. And is there a night game maybe? I can't remember.
So the Knicks have a noon tip. So
Yep.
the Knicks always have the noon tip, and on Christmas Day. So I'll probably watch the Knicks, but
Yeah, it's just it feels like a desperate attempt to attract viewers, and I don't think it's working because football controls so much of the sports world at this time of year.
do you think football is trying to sink basketball? Like how much like between the NFL and the NBA is there there's obviously a competition for eyeballs, but surely the NFL doesn't want to totally tank the NBA.
I don't think there's any effort to kill the NBA. I just think there's the effort to we want to make more money
Yeah.
and we want to capitalize on our popularity. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep, expanding the brand and going from there. So yeah, I don't know. I and now that the college football season expanded the playoff, um, that's going to takes away more oxygen from I think from the sports world. I mean, I do think there is a limited amount of attention that sports people tend to give. You have
Yeah.
your diehards, but again, I just think, especially with the NBA, it's like there are 82 regular season games. Why does this one matter? Why
Yeah.
should I watch this as opposed to a good NFL game or a college football championship, conference championship game or a college football playoff game? Like, why should I watch? Unless you really like basketball more than football, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I
then,
mean, it's hard. It's
e-
hard. I mean,
e-
I'm keeping an eye on scores right now, and I want to know
yeah.
did the Knicks win? Did they not win?
But even the style of basketball now just seems so. I mean, it is so like it is all 3-point shooting and attempts in transition, right? There's just and you see these clips where it's missed three, offensive rebound, missed three, transition, missed three, transition, missed three. Like it, it's just I think the quality of the product has diminished as well.
So would you rather see that sort of the run and gun style of offense, or would you rather see sort of the grinded out 75, 85 victory that was like prevalent by the Miami Heat, the Knicks in the 90s? You know what I'm talking
I mean, I
about?
think, oh yeah, I mean, there's a middle ground.
Sure, sure. But I'm asking you either or question here.
I mean, I suppose, gosh, I don't know. Like that's a hard question because it feels more and more like contemporary NBA is moving closer to what the All-Star game is,
Yeah, yeah.
where it's just run and gun, it's transition, the defense is eh, and I I'm not advocating a return to the Knicks Heat series of the 90s where it was like first 1 to 75 probably wins. And if you escape the game without a cut on your face, it's a success kind of thing. Like, I'm not advocating for that. But anyway, uh, I'm just the grumpy old man. Get off my
I
lawn here.
so I do think this is a place where the college game has a whole lot more fun to it. Like it seems like the NBA's bought into one style of basketball
Yeah.
and it's sort of run with it, and virtually every game is very, very similar. Um, you have some uniquenesses based on some individual players, the Donovan Mitchells, the LeBrons, the Carl Anthony Town. The individual players are really exciting to watch, but
Hmm.
the bones of the game are virtually the same.
Yeah.
Um, but the college game, you get some guys that are like, all right, we're going to run four guards and a 6'5" center out there, and we're
Yeah.
going to see what happens. Or we're
Yeah.
going to run a 2-3 zone, or we're going to, and they have their shtick that they run, and it creates some interesting things. Or you have the team that signs, all right, we're going to sign this 7'4" guy. He weighs 220 pounds, and a stiff breeze will knock him over. But he's 7'4", and we're going to put him underneath the basket.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and so there's some, I don't know. That's where I think the college game is a leg up, where you have diversity of play, basically.
That is true. The challenge with the college game is that it's hard to keep track of who these players are because they're there for 1 year and they either go to the league if they're really good or they transfer somewhere, right?
Yep.
And so there's no like, even if you follow a specific team, it's like every year is now I don't know half the roster this year. Like, and we're only talking about 12 kids, right? You're not talking
Yeah.
about a whole huge roster or 15, I guess. But anyway, all right, John, we need to move on here to our main topic for the day. We are finishing out our um, Advent in Isaiah, part
Okay.
3. And so I'm partial to our text today just because it's not only talking about Isaiah here, but we're talking about Luke. So two books that I've done some work in, and this text in particular, I think, is something that I enjoy talking about because I've done a little bit of work on it as well. So we're going to look at Luke chapter 2,
You want to start in Luke, or you want to start in Isaiah?
start in Luke. And let's go ahead and we're going to look at when Jesus is presented in the temple
Okay.
by his parents. So that passage starts in chapter 2, verse 22. Um, and let's see here. We're actually going to start reading though in verse 25.
Oh,
And let's see here. Let's go through um 35. 25 to 35. That'll work.
10 verses. You want me to bite those off real quick?
You got it. And I think I don't think there are any challenging names in there, John. So
I'll be the determiner of that, Doc. All right, Luke 2:25 to 35. Now there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and this man was righteous and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel. And the Holy Spirit was upon him. And it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And he came in the Spirit into the temple when the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him according to the custom of the law. He took him up in his arms and blessed God, saying, Lord, now you are letting your servant depart in peace according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, that you have prepared in the presence of all peoples a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to your people Israel. And his father and mother marveled at what was said about him. And Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, Behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign that is opposed. And a sword will pierce through your own soul also, so that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed.
All right. So lots in there. Um, and see, no names that were challenging, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. So the thing, so a little bit of context here. Obviously, uh, Joseph and Mary are presenting Jesus in the temple. Um, verse 22 talks about the purification rites that were required for an Israelite woman after she had given birth. And then, so that's the context for getting Joseph and Mary with the Christ child into the temple. And, you think about what it must have been like. I suppose by now, do you think they were used to this in terms of, a fuss being made about Jesus, right? I mean, they've got wise men visiting, they've got shepherds from the field, angelic announcements. So I suppose this probably is just like, ho hum, another day.
Although they marveled, right?
They
That's what the
do.
text is. They marveled.
They do. And so you've got this guy named Simeon who has been told, look, you're not going to die until you get to see the Messiah, which that's a pretty sweet thing for God to tell you.
Oh yeah.
And so it's just interesting. Like it says he took him up. That's the Christ took baby Jesus, took him up in his arms. I'm assuming he asked permission, right? He wasn't like just grabbing the child.
Sure. You're most likely right. That'd be a generous reading of the text.
I feel like that's probably a safe assumption. And then our focus is going to be on verse 32, where Simeon refers to this child as a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to your people, Israel. And so, of course, lots of Old Testament allusions in the context here, but that particular verse alludes to Isaiah 49. And so we should turn there. Isaiah 49. And this is one of the so-called servant songs in Isaiah. And part of what's fascinating about this text is that in the context of Isaiah, you've got these so-called servant songs. You've got four, maybe five servant songs, these sections where it's about the servant or the servant is talking. And part of what's really interesting is that in Isaiah 42, you have the first servant song. And in the context, it's describing what Israel was supposed to be as a nation, who they were supposed to be. And part of what they were supposed to be was to be a light to the nations. They were supposed to be set apart as a kingdom of priests. They were supposed to be set apart to the Lord in such a way that the nations would look at them and go, wow, Yahweh is amazing. We want to know more about him. And then Isaiah 42, later in the same chapter, makes it clear that Israel fails in this particular mission. And so then you get to chapter 49, and there's another servant song. And what's interesting here is that you have language that makes it clear that this servant in view in Isaiah 49 is not the nation of Israel, but it's an individual. And so let's look now at Isaiah 49. And John, we'll just have you read verses 5 and 6.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so Isaiah 49, 5 and 6. And now the Lord says, He who formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob back to him, and that Israel might be gathered to him. For I am honored in the eyes of the Lord, and my God has become my strength. He says, it is too light a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to bring back the preserved of Israel. I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth.
Okay, so a couple things here. First, notice that the description in verse 5 makes it clear that the servant here cannot be the nation of Israel because this servant has a mission to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to bring back the preserved ones of Israel.
Yeah,
So that can't be Israel. That has to
can't
be
be Israel.
some other entity. And what this is showing is that this is actually an individual. And
That
if you go
seems to
back
be the
to
implication. Yeah,
yeah, if you go back to verse 3, you have the servant recounting, this is what Yahweh said to him, you are my servant, Israel, in whom I will be glorified, which seems at first to run against what I just said.
it
But
does.
the reality is, this individual is going to embody what the nation of Israel was supposed to do. He is going to obey where Israel failed. And this mission of the servant is to not just restore the remnant of Israel, verse 5, but verse 6 goes on to say, um, I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth. So this individual servant who will obey where Israel failed is not just raised up to bring the remnant of Israel back. This servant is raised up to be a light of salvation to the ends of the earth. So then, um, John, what do you think when Simeon's quoting this? What what does he have in mind, or what is he doing with this text as he's speaking it or saying it to Joseph and Mary there?
Well, he's kind of identifying the child they hold as the Christ, as this individual servant that will bring back. I mean, he's applying these passages, basically.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward fulfillment.
Yeah,
It's saying God promised this, now it's coming to pass. And part of what's interesting here is that when you understand what's going on in the context of Isaiah, what you see is that this individual servant needs to suffer in order to accomplish this redemption, right? I mean, we don't stop reading about the servant in Isaiah 49. Isaiah goes on to talk about how this servant is going to suffer. And that, of course, is in Isaiah 53, one of the more well-known messianic
sure.
prophecies in the Old Testament. And so, and I think that helps us even illuminate a little bit here in Luke 2 when he continues and talks about how, a sword is going to pierce your own soul, that, it would be easy to think that with the arrival of Messiah, everything's going to be great now. This Messiah has come, redemption is here, and it's all going to be great. But he makes it clear, actually, no, this child is appointed for the fall and rising of many in Israel and for a sign that is opposed. So it's anticipating even there the suffering that the Messiah is going to experience there.
Interesting. Interesting.
So, and you pointed out back in Luke 2, his father and his mother, this is verse 33, his father and his mother marveled at what was said about him. which is consistent, right? I mean, we've seen that before in Luke's account here of these things happen, and Mary is, treasuring these things in her heart. She's reflecting, she's pondering. Um, so as you look at this passage, um, if you were getting ready to, preach this on a Christmas Eve service, what are some lines of application or points of application you might want to draw attention to, whether it's for believers or even non-Christians who are the classic show up to church on Christmas and Easter.
Um, oh my goodness. Well, I think that message of salvation for all people, right? The Gentiles would certainly be uh, top of my list. Yeah, I think that'd probably be top of my, just off the top of my head, that'd probably be the number one thing I'd go to as sort of light of revelation for the Gentiles.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I think um, that's certainly a good place to start for sure, and to think
I'd
of.
also go to the sovereignty of God, right? This child is appointed um, for both the fall of some and rising of others.
Mhm. Good. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Um, I think as well, even the note of that this uh the arrival of Christ essentially by its very nature forces a decision.
Hmm.
And it's going to end up sorting people out. So you've got, he's saying that this child is appointed for the fall and rising of many in Israel. And so um, the fact that the arrival of Jesus means that you have to make a decision about the kingdom. And that's a consistent theme that runs throughout all the gospels. That when Jesus announces the kingdom, this is not something you can say, that's interesting, and then just sort of move on as if it has no bearing on your life. Or as if you can say, well, I'll put this off and think about this, maybe when I get older or maybe later in my life. But right now, things are going well. I don't really need to think about Jesus. Um, I think there's the urgency and the fact that Christ demands the reality of who he is and what he offers demands a response, and it can't be really one of indifference. I also think I would probably want to draw attention to um, that last line there that Simeon says, so that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed.
Hmm.
You think about how the religious leaders um, have this experience often with Jesus, that he's able to read their minds.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of application, I think that this would be an opportunity to suppress down towards um, on the outside you might think you have it all put together, and you might have others fooled about having it all put together. But the Lord knows your thoughts. He knows you better than you know yourself. And the things that you don't that you think you've managed to hide from others are never hidden from the Lord. And that's a two-edged sword, even just, like he talks about in this passage, right? On the one hand, if there's the posture of hardness of heart, then that's a warning. That's a
Hmm.
warning that judgment's coming, that you're not going to pull one over on the Lord. But if there's a sorrow, a regret, and even a repentance over, yes, I regret those thoughts or those actions or that part of my life. Um, that there is forgiveness freely offered, and that it's not like you can get into the kingdom of God and God will be like, "Oh, I would have never let you in if I had known that that was going on or that was the
Mm.
case," right? You know, it's not like people who get hired for a job who, lie on their resume or don't reveal something that they should have that disqualifies them for the job. God knows the resume inside and out and knows what's not on the resume that you don't want to
Sure.
talk about. And so that's comforting, right? It's He knows how messed up we are and still offers um, his forgiveness through Christ.
Hmm. Yeah.
Any other final thoughts here on Luke 2 or Isaiah 49 as we round out our discussion here?
I don't think so. I would love to hear you talk sometime just about the character of Simeon. We just don't seem to know much about him. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We don't know really anything about him other than he seems to have been obviously a faithful, a faithful Jew waiting for God to send redemption. And it seems like it's interesting. It's just sort of a snapshot. Luke loves to highlight these common, ordinary individuals.
yeah.
Like there's nothing remarkable by worldly standards about Simeon. He's just described as a guy who is waiting for God's redemption, and he's faithfully in the temple worshiping.
Yeah.
And he's given this insight by the Spirit that I'm going to let you see the Lord's Messiah before you die. Um, and this ties in even with uh, the sermon that you and I heard yesterday uh,
Hmm.
at our church, out of Micah 5:2, just about God's delight in working on displaying His glory in small places and small stages.
Yeah.
And that should be an encouragement to us. And I think Simeon's an example of this, just a faithful believer waiting for the Messiah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
All right, John, we should probably move on to this day in sports history.
All right. This day in sports history, December 17th, 2024, coming down to the end of the year here.
That's right. That's right. Only it's interesting because this is a little bit of a weird glitch of the calendar. We're going to have, in one sense, an extra episode this year because of the way the calendar falls.
Hmm.
So 5 years of weekly episodes, 5 times 52 should get you to 260, but we'll end the year with episode 261.
Oh. Hmm.
And so bonus content that you didn't pay for, people.
Um, yeah, this day, 1963, Ballon d'Or, uh, Dynamo Moscow goalkeeper Lev Yashin wins award for best European football player, beats Milan midfielder uh, Gianni Rivera,
Rivera. It's not the river.
and Tottenham striker Jimmy Greaves, first Russian national to win trophy.
So clearly that Ballon d'Or, I'm sure our soccer people are just gonna, love that. Um, but that must be the name of the award for best player or something like that, right?
Oh, I assume so. Yeah. That second half of that word looks like gold of some kind. Like it kind of reminds me of gold in other languages. So I wonder, I don't know. Anyway, moving on. 1991, Cleveland Cavaliers beat Miami Heat 148 to 80 by 68 points, a record.
That's a big win.
Yeah.
But were they? I can't remember. Was that in the like early days of the Miami Heat like expansion? Like were they like an expansion franchise at that point? Maybe I don't know, but
I don't
it's
know,
hard to win an NBA game by 68 points.
particularly in the 90s,
Yeah, exactly.
as previously discussed.
Yeah,
2014, 103-year-old Gus Androne, am I getting that right?
Andreone.
Andreone records the eighth ace of his career on the 113-yard 14th hole of the Lakes course, Palm Airy, Sarasota, Florida. Oldest golfer to record a hole in one.
That's a lot. I mean, first of all, just to be golfing at 103 is impressive.
That is impressive. I would just like a hole in one. That would be fun.
Well, I mean, if you live to 103, John, that means you've still got a good, 60, what, 65 years,
Yeah,
68?
something like that.
Yeah.
2019, England's Fallon Sherrock becomes first woman, that's a woman apparently, to win a match at the PDC World Darts Championship, beating compatriot Ted Evans. Here's some great English names.
Yeah.
3-2 at Alexandra Palace in London.
There you go.
Um, yeah, have you ever gotten into darts? Like
No,
me
I,
either.
I'm impressed by people who are good at darts, but
Um, 2022, Minnesota Vikings recover from 33-0 down at half to beat the Indianapolis Colts 39-36 in overtime at USA Bank Stadium. Minneapolis, Minnesota, the biggest comeback in NFL history.
that's impressive. And it actually fits with our theme of the Colts choking away opportunities today.
Yes, yes. Who do you like, Doc?
Um, I mean, I'm tempted to go with Gus Andreone, the eighth ace of his career at age 103.
Yeah, that's impressive. Now, 113 yards, he's clearly playing from the senior tees, um, but it's still very, very impressive.
I mean, John, you could put me at that hole for the next 6 months, and I don't think I'm getting an ace. Are we going with Gus?
Let's go with Gus.
All right. One thing you liked.
All right, so I shifted mine at the last moment here, based on our darts conversation.
I noticed that.
Um, I, uh, winter is always a hard season here because you're kind of locked inside and you can't do things outside. And so I am constantly trying to find things for us to do inside. And I purchased a game called Pop Darts. Have you heard of Pop Darts?
I have not.
Basically, you put this stubbier, bigger, like suction dart on a hard surface that it'll stick to, and you stick it to it, and you step back, and it turns into like horseshoes. You are throwing these things with suction cups on either end of them and trying to get it to stick to the top of that dart. And 3 points for the closest one. You have 1 point for every dart you stick. And then you have a negation scoring and you play to 21. It's sort of like a mix of darts and cornhole indoors.
Hmm. Interesting. And is this something that you and Andrea are playing? Or are you playing
We,
with other people? Like,
yeah, we just got it this week, so we have played it a little bit, but
okay. All right.
Pop
And
darts.
Pop Darts. All right. If the company that makes Pop Darts is listening,
Absolutely.
we would be open to a little business arrangement.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm going to go with this past weekend. I finished up a book that I'm writing on the wisdom of God, and so I'm getting ready to turn that into Crossway. That's going to be
Nice.
in the um, short studies in biblical theology series. And I don't know if it'll make it out. It might. I don't know. Hard to say. I don't know if it'll make it out by the end of 2025 or not. Sometimes these things take longer than you would expect, even though it's a short book.
Hmm.
Like it's the length of asking the right questions. So just around 30,000 words, short, readable. So, um, that book has its genesis, its origins in me being asked to speak in chapel at Grace
Huh.
on Proverbs 8. And
Really?
the passage that it's been debated throughout church history whether does this refer to Jesus as, wisdom is there before the creation, that kind of thing. And so that preparing to speak on that passage in chapel was what started me down the road that led me to eventually write this book. So I guess a shout out to our
Nice.
chaplain, Brent, right?
Nice. Nice. He will be getting no royalties, though, correct?
No, of course not.
Okay. Okay. Just double checking.
I mean, I I'm not sure I'll be getting a lot of royalties. I think people radically overestimate how much authors make off of their books. So
Hmm.
that is my one thing I liked. Okay,
Nice.
John, we have talked about the Jets winning a football game. We have talked about Isaiah 49:6 in Luke chapter 2. We have talked about Gus Andreone. And
The
we
Gusser.
have talked, yes, we have talked about Pop Darts, not to be confused with Pop Tarts.
Yeah. Very different.
And we've talked about me finishing the wisdom book. And so I think by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so all that's left to say is, until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.